Heading south on Highway 21, and without really trying, the road falls in step with the railway. During the summer, this land softens. In the winter, it tells the truth. No crops, no colors, no distractions. Just distance, silence, and places that were built to endure both. Up ahead is Bashaw, a prairie town shaped by rails, road, and time. Now, towns like Bashaw don't appear randomly. They form where movement slows, where something we're stopping for takes shape. From the road, this isn't always obvious. Long before Bashaw existed as a town, this area was already being used. The land around Buffalo Lake was part of a much older human landscape. Indigenous peoples hunted buffalo here and used the lake and surrounding plains seasonally. By the 1870s, there was a sizable encampment on the northeast arm of Buffalo Lake, roughly 12 miles east and 4 miles south of where Bashaw would later stand. Made up largely of Métis and Indigenous families who hunted buffalo across the nearby plains. In 1870, the Hudson's Bay Company operated a trading post nearby. One of its factors, Francis Whitford, acted as both a fur buyer and an interpreter between Cree and English speakers. This area was active long before the railway or town sites arrived. However, it was not permanent in the way later settlement would be. As the buffalo disappeared and policies changed, these early concentrations of population faded. By the time Bashaw appeared, that early world had already receded. In the late 1890s and early 1900s, homesteaders began arriving in what is now known as the Bashaw District. This was not a mining area or a speculative land rush. Settlement here was agricultural from the start. Families broke land, built modest homes, and lived spread out across the countryside rather than cluster in town. One example often cited is Old Brasseth, who arrived in the district in 1909. Born in Norway in 1869, he had lived in Minnesota and Montana before coming north for health reasons. After a brief stay in Stettler, his family moved into the Bashaw district by horse and wagon. Their first home was a small log structure with a sod roof. During this period, mail and supplies had to be fetched from other communities. Children walked long distances to school across open fields, and winters were harsh enough that lunches froze before they could be eaten. This was life here before Bashaw existed as anything more than prairie grass. The land where Bashaw now stands was originally homesteaded by a Métis man named Joe Lewis. Now, according to local historical accounts, a poker game played sometime in the early 1900s became central to town's later development. One evening, Joe found himself involved in a serious card game. The game got heated and things weren't going his way. He soon ran out of cash. So he did what any good gambler would do. He put the title of his land into the pot for security. The next hand was dealt, and on the turn of a card, he lost. The quarter section eventually changed hands and was sold to Eugene Bashaw for $500. This story appears consistently in local history, but it should be understood as a community account rather than a single documented legal moment. What is clear is that Eugene Bashaw acquired the land that would later become Bashaw. At this point, there still was no town. That changed in 1909 when the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway was planning a line through central Alberta. Early plans suggested the line would pass through a nearby community called Jarvis, bypassing Bashaw's land altogether. It was at that point that Mr. Bashaw traveled to Camrose to meet with the railway officials. Local history credits him with striking a deal that redirected the line through his property instead. When rail construction reached the area in 1910, everything changed quickly. This was a defining moment. Bashaw exists because the railway came here. The first trains arrived in 1910. A station and a siding were established, and the area transformed almost immediately from scattered farms to a town site. This new settlement was incorporated as the village of Forester on August 18, 1911. But the name did not last for long because another Forester already existed in Saskatchewan. The name was changed in 1912 to Bashaw in recognition of Eugene Bashaw's role in developing the town and securing the railway. The post office opened on December 15, 1910, even before formal incorporation. On the prairies, a post office was a signal of permanence. Bashaw was no longer temporary. The year was 1911. Bashaw already had 22 businesses. These included general stores, hardware stores, lumber yards, blacksmith shops, barbers, restaurants, livery barns, and 2 doctors' offices. One can't forget the hotel, which became the social center of the town. The first grain elevator had a capacity of 40,000 bushels and stood on the site of what later became the Pioneer Elevator. Other elevators soon followed. A local newspaper, the Buffalo Times, began publication after the railway arrived. Bashaw was functioning exactly as intended, a rail-based agricultural service town. Social life in early Bashaw centered on necessity rather than leisure. Card games, dances, and gatherings were common, not for entertainment alone, but to manage isolation. Schools and halls doubled as community centers. Hotels served as gathering points for travelers, salesmen, and locals alike. One early hotel became well known for its bar. Accounts describe a bar with no chairs. If you wanted a drink, you bellied up to the counter. Beer and liquor sold for 25 cents a drink, and it was well known that traveling salesmen could use the display room downstairs to show their goods. In 1916, the hotel burned to the ground under what was described as suspicious circumstances. With it ended what some later accounts would call Bashaw's brief Wild West phase. Stories about horses being ridden into the bar and the occasional shootout are often told, but there's no solid documentation to support these accounts, placing them more in the realm of local folklore. Bashaw's growth was steady rather than explosive. Population figures reflect this pattern. Bashaw was not a boom town. It never collapsed. It expanded only as much as agriculture required. The town sat in the black soil zone, supported by mixed farming and livestock production, and this environment proved to serve the town well. By the 1950s, Bashaw had reached maturity. It had schools, a full range of services, and a stable population. The rail lines still defined the town's layout, and the grain elevators dominated the skyline. Roads followed the rail corridor, not the other way around. A mid-century civic description called Bashaw the best town on the GTP line between Edmonton and Calgary. Whether promotional or factual, it reflects how town saw itself at the time: established, well-settled, and complete. In 1959, the town became linked to one of the most disturbing criminal cases in Alberta's history. Not because the crime occurred here, but because of how it unfolded afterward. In June of that year, 7 members of the Cook family were murdered in Stettler, Alberta. These victims included Raymond Cook, his wife Daisy, and 5 of their children. The scale of brutality of the crime shocked rural Alberta and drew intense attention from both police and the public. Suspicion quickly centered on Robert Raymond Cook. This was Raymond Cook's eldest son from a previous marriage. He was arrested and later sent to the Ponoka Mental Hospital for psychiatric evaluation, while the authorities determined how to proceed. On July 11, 1959, Cook escaped from the hospital in Ponoka. After stealing a vehicle and crashing it, he fled on foot into the countryside of central Alberta. With little information on his direction or his condition, police initiated an extensive search effort. Over the next 4 days, more than 100 police officers were involved, using patrol cars, foot searches, and aircraft to comb the farmland, coulees, and rural buildings. This manhunt created widespread anxiety across the region. Warnings circulated quickly through the small towns and farmsteads. Many farmers kept firearms loaded, and families remained indoors or close to home, anticipating the possibility of a violent confrontation. On July 13, 1959, Cook was discovered hiding on a farm near Bashaw. He was taken into custody without resistance. And for a brief period, Bashaw, normally known as a quiet agricultural service town, became the focal point of the province. This event stands out in the town's history precisely because it's so out of character with everything that Bashaw represents, before and after that summer. After the 1950s, Bashaw entered the same period of change faced by most prairie towns. Steam gave way to diesel, trucks took over the work once done by the rail, passenger rail service all but disappeared. Farms grew larger, yet they required fewer people. This was not a collapse, it was consolidation. As Bashaw moved into the later half of the 20th century, much of its early physical history wasn't removed, it was reused. The former jailhouse, built in 1915, now serves as town's museum. Once part of Bashaw's civic and law enforcement, it now holds photographs, artifacts, and records that document everyday life in town and the surrounding district. Its history kept where it actually happened. One can't forget the Majestic Theatre, also built in 1915, constructed during Bashaw's early growth years. It's believed to be one of the last surviving wood-frame boomtown theatres in Western Canada. For decades, it served as a social anchor, a place for films, performances, and community gatherings. And there's the grain elevator. While most wooden elevators have disappeared all across Alberta, Bashaw's last wooden grain elevator was completed in 1983. It's privately owned and remains in operation, still doing the job this town was built to do. Now, of course, I know this doesn't cover everything about Bashaw. No single visit ever could. But if you're curious, you're welcome to come through here, walk the streets, talk to the people, and discover what I've missed for yourself. Bashaw wasn't built to be remembered, it was built to function. Hey, my name is Mike. If you enjoyed this content, consider liking the video, subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to support what I'm doing. If you have anything you'd like to share, leave a comment. Perhaps you would like to suggest a town or have a prairie story idea. Well, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for stopping by. See you next time. Take care.